It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio. Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147 at Sirius XM. Shaun Haney, your host here on this Monday edition of the show. Hey, thanks so much for making RealAg Radio and Rural Radio 147 a big part of your work day. And a big shout out as well to everybody listening out there on the RealAg Radio podcast. It is great to have you here with us on this Memorial Day Monday. Long weekend for our listeners south of the border. Canada, we had our long weekend last week, so this is always a funny period of time as we get a little bit closer to June, kind of waiting for temperatures to increase in Western Canada. Mid-20s for parts of this week on the Western Canadian prairies. Of course, Ontario, in Eastern Canada, hot the back end of last week, and some pretty big rain events, too, over the weekend in parts of Central and Eastern Canada. So, yeah, overall, though, more moisture falling in Canada. I haven't seen the overall precipitation maps comparing this year to some of the past years, but it's got to be more this year. Which is overall, just, I don't know, it could be recency bias. And I know even some of the areas in Western Canada where you have been getting some moisture, people keep reminding me we're not out of the woods yet. We are not, but we're looking a lot better. Much better situation, of course, than the past couple months. Okay, today on the show, it's Agronomic Monday. So we're, of course, going to be joined by Peter W.P. Johnson to be here later on in the program. We're going to talk all things agronomy. I want to talk to him about early season weed control. We're going to talk about stripe rust issues in the east, in the eastern corn belt, as well as in Ontario, and a bunch of stuff. And then we got Shaun McKnight here from BASF, talking about herbicide layering. And when it comes to dealing with herbicide resistance, herbicide layering is one of the strategies, the tools in our toolkit. Got to make sure we're fully understanding that. And then we'll have a product spotlight as well with Matt Chapple of Pride Seeds. If you have any feedback on today's program, you can send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can also find us across all the different social media platforms. You know, what you also can do, though, is call the RealAg feedback line. That number is 855-776-6147. Now, it was last Tuesday where I said, hey, kind of a fun segment called What Was I Thinking? And I shared a kind of a personal story where, you know, when we were farming, we started a gravel pit and it's sort of a financial disaster, but, you know, what the heck were we thinking? But everybody has, you know, hindsight's always easy. Mistakes are, you know, not hard to come by in the world of agriculture, but you got to try to learn from them, right? And so, yeah, and sometimes it's nice to sort of commiserate together in terms of some of the, nobody's perfect, but, you know, sort of commiserating together when it comes to some of our bad business decisions that we have made. So I asked you, what was your, you know, what was I thinking? And we've got a number of things back, and you can keep these coming. One person said cows. that was the only thing the text message said. Cows. It's like, okay. They're not looking too bad right now. A lot more work than sometimes people think, but they're looking not too bad right now. Here was a common one. And probably there's a lot of people that have this sort of thought, but I'm summarizing here, not buying more land over the years. I had a number of those. You know, how much higher can it go? Man, it's sure gone up. There's no way to go but down. Remember the 80s? Like, you know, we're kind of stained by that a little bit. But land has been a pretty good place to put your money. If you got money to reinvest into your operation, land's been a pretty good investment. Never mind commercial real estate or other things like that. You know, diversifying your farm investments. Land is a pretty good place to put stuff, and it has been. It's been very strong. One person said, this was interesting, not selling out of the drought area, and I should have moved to an irrigated area. That was kind of almost like a regret. But, you know, what was I thinking in terms of staying where I am, where, you know, victim to Mother Nature was, as we have seen an expansion of some of the irrigated areas. But there's as if there's not problems. You just have different problems, as I always say. in the area of irrigation. So yeah, keep those coming. What are those business decisions that you have made over the years where you're like, okay, man alive, we'll chalk it up to an expensive education, but what the heck was I thinking? All of this was spurred on by an article in the Wall Street Journal talking about some business decisions in terms of some of the reflections. So keep them coming. Email address is shaney@realagriculture.com. Make sure you do not forget about the agronomists tonight, 8 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock Mountain on the Real Agriculture YouTube channel or at realagriculture.com/live. We got a great program for you tonight, hosted by Lindsay Smith. And it's all about plant growth regulators, PGRs. Yes, this is super applicable for those of you in Western Canada that are looking at putting a PGR in with your herbicide pass. And even if you've got winter wheat and you're way past the stage, it's something for you to think back to in terms of what would have been more of some of the factors into this decision. So check it out. It is tonight, The Agronomist, 8 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock Mountain, every single Monday night, Real Ag in prime time. Let's take a break. We'll be back with more of Real Ag Radio, and we'll be joined by Shaun McKnight of BASF right after this.
Choose Viatude fungicide and unleash best-in-class sclerotinia protection in canola and premium protection against white mold in soybeans. Viatude contains a powerful premix of Onmira Active and prothioconazole. This unique combo delivers high-performance disease control, crop safety, mix compatibility, resistance management, and advanced mobility for excellent coverage and superior plant protection. Choose Viatude fungicide for stronger, more vigorous crops.
I get to spend every day talking to farmers in the ag industry through RealAgriculture.com and RealAg Radio. But nothing is more fun than speaking to an audience live and in person. If you're planning an ag event, book a Real Agriculture speaker to make it a successful and memorable experience. Email shaney@realagriculture.com and you can book myself or any other Real Ag personality to speak at your event. Bring your audience all the fun, insight, and energy of Real Agriculture.
Peter Johnson at WheatPete, RealAgriculture.com, and what an opportunity! Oh my gosh! You think you can't grow better wheat? You are absolutely wrong. We're going to show you how to strive for those record wheat yields that they get in the UK and in New Zealand. You can grow 150 bushel wheat. I'll show you how.
Catch WheatPete's Word every Wednesday on RealAgriculture.com or download the podcast on iTunes or Spotify. We know that across the Western Canadian prairies, well, outside of that geography as well, weed resistance is an issue, an agronomic issue that a lot of growers continue to have to try to battle. And there's a number of different strategies that come into play here. One of the phrases that you often hear is herbicide layering. Now, that is different than herbicide rotation. In a recent Pulse School episode, you can find more episodes of Pulse School by going to pulseschool.com, that is brought to you by BASF Canada. We did an interview with Shaun McKnight. He is with BASF and talked about, from a pulse perspective, but it applies to other crops as well, how herbicide layering is a strategy to combat herbicide resistance. Here's that conversation.
So basically, herbicide layering is utilizing multiple herbicide passes to manage difficult weeds on your farm.
Okay. And what does that look like in terms of technicality for a farmer? They're loading up different tanks and going over it once at a time?
Yeah, so for instance, you might be talking about multiple passes in a season. That's basically what you're going to do with herbicide layering. So, in the springtime, you'd probably be using hopefully a residual herbicide if you can, and then you're going to plan your in-crop application and perhaps maybe even a post-harvest, depending on how hard the weed is to control. And realistically, your plan is based around your toughest driver weed, is what I would say. So maybe it's wild oats for you, it might be cleavers, it might be kochia, but whatever the most difficult to control weed is for you, that's probably what you're going to build your layering program around.
Okay. So practically speaking, how is this different in philosophy or difference in strategy from straight tank mixing, say?
In reality, it's really not. So tank mixing is for sure a part of your herbicide layering strategy. So, in the spring, let's just use wild oats for instance. You're growing a pulse crop. You might be using a group 15 mixed with glyphosate in the spring, and another burn down herbicide probably. And so hopefully you limit that wild oats population for your in-crop application, which because it's pulses, is probably a 2 and a 1 mixed together. So we do have multiple modes of action there as long as we have no resistance. And then in the fall, you might be also tank mixing more herbicides. So you have 3 herbicide applications there, and hopefully, if you can, you're actually tank mixing different modes of action as well.
So tank mixing in there while doing the layering.
While doing the layering, right?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So that's quite technical. There's a lot of different chemistries there to consider. How does this typically fit into a weed management strategy? Like, how do you see this implemented on farms in this area?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, first of all, depending on the crop, you may only have certain herbicide options, and so that kind of limits the available chemistries that you can have. So, the idea is that it fits in, as best as you can. You're going to rotate as many modes of action and chemistries that you can, and it also builds into your other crop years. So, specifically talking about pulses, we want to do a really good job of controlling a weed like kochia in years that we can use, products other than group 2s, right? So that's super important. So it's kind of a multi-year strategy, and we want to layer in as many herbicides as we can.
Well, that makes sense. Does this reduce selection pressure substantially?
So every time you apply a herbicide, you're going to have selection pressure. So that's the honest truth. But what you do is you kind of eliminate the stacking up of selection pressures, perhaps. So let's use Edge or a group 15, for instance. So you apply that in the spring. Hopefully you lower the population of weeds that will emerge for your in-crop application of wild oats, for instance. And so you're going to try and eliminate the amount of stacking up of different selection pressures. So, if you're just planning on one in-crop application to control those wild oats, then you have your one selection pressure there, and you might stack those up year over year. Whereas with a layering program, hopefully you're not going to, continually select with one chemistry. You're going to kind of, multiply those applications across different groups.
So as much as possible, we're giving a particular group a bit of a break there.
For sure. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense. Is it more important or difficult in pulse crops specifically than in other types? Is there a favorability here?
Yeah, so it's kind of both, right? Like pulse crops, especially when we're talking lentils, right? We're kind of tied to the group 2 chemistries in crop. Peas as well. Maybe we have products that we can use group 6s there too. But with pulse crops, it's for sure important as well as difficult. So we got to find different products we can use in the spring, residual herbicides, hopefully to limit the amount of weeds that we have, putting selection pressure on that in-crop herbicide. So for sure, it's probably more important in pulse crops and also more difficult in certain respects as well, just because of the limited amount of chemistries we have to work with. So yeah.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah. So talking about the benefits there, I think we understand that we're giving each group a bit of a bump there in its potential to be effective long term. Mm-hmm. What are some of the drawbacks to using multiple modes of action at one time?
So, good question. I don't know that there's necessarily any drawbacks, but I think the key point would be is that if you're using, you could use your multiple mode of action product, and if you're using it one time every year to control that specific driver weed, the drawback there would be that we're just having that one selection pressure event year over year, as I mentioned before, stacking it all together. So there really is, the drawbacks there would be that we have that one application. So when it comes to the layering program, we do want to be mixing in multiple modes of action where we can, but we also want to stack up those applications to continually control that specific weed we're worried about.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Is there any hesitation that you see in the industry about adopting herbicide layering, or is it something that you're seeing quite a bit of success with, something that's adopted by farmers right away?
Yeah, I think it's being adopted by growers. We see there's been a huge uptick in fall residual herbicides and pulse crops, for instance, especially. And so, growers there are going after kochia, most likely. They're putting in a group 15 for kochia and wild oats and that type of thing. I would say that the biggest drawback to get people to sign on board is most likely has a lot to do with the costs involved, for sure. But I think, there's a lot of benefits. So, Chris Willenberg has done a lot of research at the U of S and showing that we actually see some some yield bumps with specific crops. Canola specifically with some of the work that they did, but we did see, yield increases when we do a layering program. And so that might not be something as a grower that you see specifically because you're applying a herbicide across your entire field, right? But we are seeing yield bumps there too. So, hopefully the cost isn't a total concern for growers. But we are seeing a pretty big uptick in what we'd consider layering programs for sure.
Well, I suppose the inverse side to the cost is that it's very tough to calculate the cost of resistance with a full group of herbicides, right? So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's for sure a cost to resistance, and whether it's yield losses because of competition due to those weeds, or maybe it's even harvest losses in terms of we have weed seeds in the crop that we're trying to sell, so we're getting dockage reductions, that type of thing. So there's for sure a cost to resistance. So if we spend a little bit more money up front in a herbicide program, hopefully we can maybe outweigh those costs that are there.
Sure. Does BASF have any available resources for farmers to learn more about herbicide layering?
Yeah, for sure. We have a program we call Advanced Weed Control. So, basically it would be our herbicide layering program for pulse crops, and we have it for canola as well. And so we do have a lot of resources on the website around that one, and so it kind of has a lot of information about, our pre-seed herbicide options and what the recommendations would be. And then on the back end, we do have some kind of weed control support guarantees there as well, which is kind of cool for growers. But yeah, I would say, if you're someone in the field talking to one of our sales reps and our tech service people, they're super knowledgeable when it comes to some of this stuff as well.
That was Shaun McKnight of BASF talking about herbicide layering. Yeah, important stuff there. And make sure, like I said, if you have more desire to see more great agronomic pulse content, go to pulseschool.com. Real Agriculture has a number of different crop schools across corn, soybeans, wheat, canola, as well as pulses. We also have a soil school as well that a lot of people find very, very valuable and informative. Okay, when we come back on RealAg Radio, we're going to hear a product spotlight with Matt Chapple of Pride Seeds. He'll join us right after this.
Canola is more than just a pretty face in the prairie landscape. It's a big business, both here and around the world, that requires you to be informed and up to date on everything it takes to grow a successful crop. The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com has an expert library of video resources covering markets, agronomy, and more to help you grow a healthy and profitable canola crop. Visit canolaschool.com today. Brought to you by BASF Canada and Invigor Hybrid Canola. If you're involved in the agriculture industry, it's important to stay informed on all the latest issues affecting your business. At RealAgriculture.com, we offer fast, reliable news, information, and insights to help you keep on top of all of the latest in Canadian agriculture. Visit RealAgriculture.com and sign up for our free daily newsletter covering everything from news, agronomy, animal agriculture, and much more. Visit RealAgriculture.com/subscribe today. It's summertime, and you've got a lot of important decisions to make when it comes to your corn crop. Let the Corn School on RealAgriculture.com help guide you through those big decisions with input from leading experts in the field. If it's spray timing, disease identification, or any other field issue, the Corn School's got you covered. The Corn School on RealAgriculture.com, brought to you by BASF and Pride Seeds.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio. It's now time for a product spotlight with Pride Seeds. And we're joined right now by Pride Seeds product manager, Matt Chapple. Hey, Matt, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How about you, Shaun?
Pretty good. It's we're getting close to the end of May here, and we're getting seed in the ground. Maybe not as quick as some people kind of would ideally like to have happen, but moisture, I guess, we'll take it. Especially if you're in the West. But in the East, some people saying, let's let up here. Let's get some better conditions. Hey, Matt, before we talk about 2024, I always like to, you and I have some great chats in the past where sometimes you got to look backwards to look forwards. What lessons learned last season really apply to this year?
Yeah, that's good. We always are learning out in the field every year, Shaun. So some of the things that stood out to our team were, determining hybrid flex, and hybrids that flexed early and often in both length, girth, and kernel weight were hybrids that were king in 2023. We learned lots about managing corn rootworm, particularly in eastern Canada, how important rotation is, and the traits are one tool in the toolbox to mitigate risk. We learned about how important biological seed treatments are, how they can help us provide that early season development in the roots. That early season development can really help us combat stress later in the season, whether it be from heat or pest pressure. And of course, Shaun, tar spot was a nasty disease everyone's talked a lot about all last year, all through the winter. And of course, we still cannot forget it as we look into 2024, how important it will be to proactively manage that disease with both genetics and fungicides. And to the tune of about 50 bushels an acre, what that could be worth at least for managing against tar spot.
Yeah. We're obviously in central and eastern Canada. We're off to a bit of a wet start, right? So gotta be on our toes when it comes to disease scouting throughout the growing season.
That's right. It's been a tale of haves and have-nots. You're either very dry and you've had some opportunities to plant, or wet. So we might be watching for some seedling diseases in the crop that is emerged now as growers are getting some significant rainfall and warm conditions. So we'll keep our eyes on the field and see what there is to be done in terms of management and plans for the future in the crop.
Yeah, and we've been, depending on how seasoned you are, you've been through a number of growing cycles throughout your career, and it's about taking that experience and up-to-date agronomic information or research and combining all that to apply to the conditions that you're faced with this year. So the other side of that is last year's problems are not this year's problems. For sure they could be, but not necessarily for sure. So you gotta, it's a challenge. You gotta be on your toes when you're thinking about some of the decisions you got to make with the crop in central, eastern, or western Canada.
You got it, Shaun. And most of all, I think it's important to know, obviously we're seed focused at Pride Seeds, and it's to know what you're working with, whether you've picked a hot hybrid or a stellar soybean variety. If you understand what that product can do in the field, based on recommendations from your agronomist, understand about nitrogen use, fungicide response, the potential of that on different products, you can really manage through a lot of different situations. And we think that, almost weatherproofing the crop is really a key way to get the most out of it every season. Even if lower yields do persist or tough environmental conditions, but you can be 5-10% better than average in that year, that's really key. And having that knowledge of different disease tolerance, performance in the field is a really important part of getting the most out of every seed acre. Yeah.
Well, at RealAgriculture, we've been doing a lot of work with yourselves at Pride Seeds for a long time. And you say that word performance, right? That's in that strong agronomic information and recommendation that goes with those high performing products is really what growers can expect out of Pride Seeds genetics.
You got it, Shaun. And we really like to focus on that, relationship with our growers, that long-standing trust. Our global capabilities with local agronomic support and the local plots that really back up and demonstrate the product performance, Shaun.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if you want to find out more about Pride Seeds, you can definitely go to prideseeds.com. Hey, Matt, thanks a lot for joining us here today on RealAg Radio. All the best to you this growing season, okay?
Yeah, thanks. Always a pleasure, Shaun.
Hey, we'll be right back on RealAg Radio here on Agronomic Monday right after this.
If you only listen to RealAg Radio, you only get half the picture. For greater insight into the issues that affect farming, tune in to RealAgriculture.com. Crops, livestock, machinery, farm management, and the markets. Even food and travel. Real Agriculture Online digs deeper into the topics that affect the way you work and live. So get connected today. Read, watch, and listen to the people who know at RealAgriculture.com.
Infuse some energy into your next corporate event, customer meeting, or conference with RealAg Radio, Canada's national agriculture radio show. Create a unique experience at your next event with host Shaun Haney, broadcasting RealAg Radio live on SiriusXM, featuring exciting guests, captivating interviews, and the latest news from the agriculture community. Contact advertising at realagriculture.com or call 587-787-1795 to book your on location with RealAg Radio today.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio here on Agronomic Monday. Hey, important notice here for grain farmers. The Canadian Grain Commission has revoked the licenses of Global Food and Ingredients, Inc., also known as GFI. Now, if this company owes you money for grain deliveries, you need to call this number, 1-800-853-6705, and do that immediately. This is a message from the government of Canada. Okay, let's talk agronomic issues with Peter Wheatpeat Johnson, agronomist for Real Agriculture. Hey, Pete, how are you doing today on this Monday?
I am doing awesome, thanks, Shaun. There's a pause in the action in Ontario. We got wet over the weekend. Things were finally going good. Even some of the heavy clays were getting to roll, and now we're at a standstill. So it's just really variable, but we're making good headway, and so things are decent at the very least.
Yeah, so we're like, and you guys were hot last week, like really warm. For sure, like I know Lindsay was complaining several times about how hot it was and muggy, and that just brings more and more moisture. Out west here, I would say this, that we're still waiting for it to heat up. Like we're to the end of May this week. We really haven't had a lot of temperatures even close to the 30s. It's been kind of elusive, that heat, but you got to think that's turning around fairly shortly.
Yeah. So, Shaun, to be perfectly honest, I didn't like last week's heat. And you should know why, because wheat doesn't like high temperatures. And a lot of wheat last week was kind of starting to head out. And so from 10 days prior to heading till 10 days after heading, or call it 2 weeks each side of heading, I want cool temperatures, sunshine, enough moisture. I want that wheat to be going flat out. And man, with high temperatures, it actually goes backwards, and that's a bad thing. So we've cooled off. We're kind of 20-ish these days. It actually cooled off about Thursday, and it's been good for the wheat crop. Send us your cool temperatures. I'm happy for that right now. But it was so warm last week that in some cases, growers were seeing soybeans twice in 1 week, once in the bag and once emerged. And that almost never happens until we get into June. But yeah, we had some really high temperatures last week, no question. Yeah,
I'm looking at the forecast right now for Saskatoon, just pulling out, let's just pick one place. And of course, Western Canada is a very large geography. So this is, this is not the Western Canadian forecast, but just let's pick on Saskatoon for a second. Tuesday, we've got 26 Celsius. And then not basically every other day is 20 to 24 between now and the 10th of June.
But that's okay for cereals. It really is.
I think so.
And even for canola. Like, you grow mainly cool season crops, the corn and soybeans, and I know you're getting to have more and more corn and soybeans, particularly in Manitoba. And in fact, to the point, which I find so interesting, because we will talk about planting soybeans before corn here. Now in Western Canada, they are talking about planting soybeans before canola. And canola, they're planting the absolute last, which there's some reasons for, but it's cool. Nonetheless, all of those things are cool season crops. They don't like it when it gets to be 30 degrees Celsius. And so having cool temperatures for the wheat crop, the canola crop, the lentil crop, that's all good.
Yeah. Okay. So don't panic yet. That's what you're saying. I like that.
Right.
Calm Pete.
Not many people would call me calm, Shaun.
This is a new you like okay. New Year's resolution that's in place here you're following up on?
Okay, Shaun, okay. I can do that.
So here's now there are pockets that probably would like more moisture depending on where you are in Canada. Like, again, big geography, so I'm broad brushing this, but overall this feels like a year where there is more moisture. Okay. And with moisture brings disease. And so this is a year where I think we got to be, I was talking about this earlier with Matt Chapple from Pride Seeds, got to be on our toes when it comes to disease management, no matter what crop we're talking about.
Yeah, 100%. And actually, Shaun, you mentioned that. And stripe rust is in the wheat crop in Ontario. And we figured out, because we found a number of locations, and we actually didn't get the first report of stripe rust until I think it was May 14th, if I recall correctly. We're quite convinced that we had it the last week of April, because we've now found sites where they sprayed the fungicide on May the 7th or May the 8th. And then we start talking about stripe rust because we found it. And the way to see stripe rust is you see these yellow spots in the field. And then, of course, if it rubs off on your finger, you've got stripe rust. Well, all of a sudden, I'm getting calls from people that say, hey, I've got stripe rust. What do I need to do? And I sprayed on May the 8th. And I go, like, come on. You don't have stripe rust if you sprayed May the 8th, because it doesn't even show for 2 weeks after it ends up landing in Ontario. I go to the field, and sure enough, they had stripe rust for at least 2 weeks before May the 8th, because they've got pockets of high infestation, and that means one spore landed and then it actually went through a life cycle and reinfected. And the fungicides look like they totally stopped it. So they sprayed as part of their normal program. They didn't see the stripe rust, but it's an awful good thing they did, because if they hadn't, that field would have been a total disaster, or those fields, I should say.
How far is stripe rust spread now? Like how big of an area is it increasing?
Yeah, so we have it at least up to Drayton. So that's we're now into the short season area of Ontario. I haven't heard any into Grey Bruce counties yet, but Drayton is kind of North Wellington, so that's getting up into that Bruce Peninsula, the bottom of the Bruce Peninsula, or close to it. So it's all the way from Windsor, through to that central part of southwestern Ontario. I haven't heard any in eastern Ontario or central Ontario, the east of Toronto, but it's showing up more and more.
And I probably should know this, but I'm going to ask it. Is it in North Dakota, and have we seen it in Manitoba?
So I have not heard it in North Dakota and Manitoba. And remember, it's the way that the storm patterns, storm fronts bring it up. So typically we get it from Illinois and Indiana, who get it from Kansas. Sometimes we can get it from Georgia and Kentucky, but Kansas could send it to Manitoba and North Dakota. But remember, they're primarily spring wheat, Shaun.
Yep.
And so they probably the wheat isn't maybe large enough yet. They haven't had that infection since they planted the wheat, whereas we got this back, like April, maybe even mid-April, and a lot of spring wheat wasn't even in the ground in Western Canada in mid-April, right?
Okay. I know I harp on this a lot, but it's worth the reminder to everybody. Early weed control and how critical that is. I look across the prairies. We've had a moisture, every other day or so many days. Like, Kelvin got a big dump on Friday, and we haven't had a lot of heat. And so as that heat, as things start to get maybe a little bit drier, the heat comes up. We're gonna have a crop emerging, and we're gonna have weeds coming strong, all in the same time period. Boy, it makes that spray window a little tighter than usual.
Yeah. So the spray window, with the rain we've had in Ontario as well, is really jammed up. And fortunately, a lot of growers now understand with soybeans, particularly IP soybeans, that they have to have the weeds killed before they plant the crop. If you don't have fleabane killed before you plant IP soybeans and the IP soybeans emerge, you might as well start over. Kill the emerged soybeans, kill the fleabane, start over. And the fleabane got big because of the winter that we had. But now we have corn emerging, and I can't believe the amount of corn emerging that I see, just a carpet of weeds. And sprayers are busy, I get that. But if you have heavy weed pressure for only 5 days after the corn emerges, you lose 1%.
Yep.
If it's 7 days, you lose 2.5%. If you're talking 200 bushel corn, that's 5 bushels that you've lost because of that 7-day delay in weed control. The weeds are getting tougher to kill as well. The longer they go, you go to 11 days, now it's 5% yield loss. That's 10 bushels. You know, if corn is $5 a bushel, that's $50 an acre that you lost, and you're still going to have to spray the same amount of herbicide to kill the weeds. So it baffles my brain why we don't focus in on that early weed control more, because if I leave the weeds to emerge, it's not like I can use less herbicide. I actually have to use more herbicide because they're harder to kill. Small weeds are easier to kill than big weeds. So spend the dollars, but do it in a timely fashion. As Peter Sickham would say, start clean, stay clean. Weeds are a huge yield robber.
Well, I think there's an element here because there was a time where this wasn't the practice. And I mean that seriously, right?
No, I totally agree. When Roundup Ready crops first came out, the mantra was wait till the weeds emerge, right? Wait till everything's there, spray once, be done, have a nice day.
Yeah.
And at that point, we didn't understand the impact of that decision. Mm-hmm. And I mean, there was the mid-90s, we were using lots of post-emergence chemistry. Some of the Group 2 herbicides came out for corn. We hadn't had Group 2 herbicides before. They were post-emergent products. They worked really well. And so you waited till 3, 4, 5-leaf corn. And now we know that by doing that, we left a lot of yield on the table. Yep. So, and with
Pete, I can remember my dad giving me crap saying, and don't spray too early.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And meanwhile, with the evolution of glyphosate-resistant weeds, now we've really started to relook at that, and we're relearning things. And do not wait till they're all emerged. I guarantee if you wait till they're all emerged, Shaun, you have lost money. You have left money on the table you didn't need to leave on the table.
And where do you think, I'm just trying to think of a scenario here, just comparing. So I've already seeded canola or spring wheat. And now the heat's starting to come, crops popping out of the ground, but also the weeds are coming at the same time. So we're competing at the exact same point. That's bad for the crop. Need to take care of those. Or there's also the decision now of seeding and then spraying after. Well, now there's going to be lots of weeds, so you probably don't even have to worry about you need to do the burn off before you go in now, I would say.
Yeah, 100%. You're burning off early, before you plant at this point. And that doesn't mean you don't have to come back through with a second pass.
Right.
But I think, I mean, if you're really jammed up, then you have to step back and say, okay, what crops suffer the most from weed competition? And the less competitive the crop, so you sort of think about the crop. When the crop grows, how thick is the canopy when it first comes up? How aggressive does it grow when it first comes up? And so edible beans, man, like they are by far the most, or the least, I should say, competitive and suffer the most from early weed competition. And then it's soybeans, and then it's corn.
Canola.
And then canola. Wheat, I hate to say it, but wheat often can tolerate some weeds because it competes really well. And that's not to say that you shouldn't go kill the cleavers in your wheat crop. My gosh, kill the clovers in your wheat crop. But if you really have to start choosing, do I send the sprayer here or send the sprayer there or keep the planter rolling? Big weeds, make sure you burn them off before you plant the crop. And then you start saying, what field makes me the most money next?
Yeah, this is one of those years where we get our butt out of the planter or seeder seat and we go right into the sprayer, and we're going to be in there for a while. That's the kind of year.
Yeah, no, this is the kind of year where you get dad back in the planter or seeder because you got too much to do. You go sit in the sprayer and get the heck going.
Yeah, there's not going to be much of a break there at a gap at all. Over a large amount of acres in Canada, indeed.
100%. Yep.
Okay, Pete, let's take a break. We've got more coming up here on RealAg Radio. Shaun Haney, Pete Johnson, and we'll be back, I promise, right after this.
How's your seed quality? What should you treat with? What about herbicide carryover and environmental concerns? Spring is here, and you've got a lot of things to think about in regards to your pulse crop. The Pulse School on Real Agriculture has information and advice for all these questions and more to help you navigate this season. Brought to you by BASF. Pulse School episodes are available at pulseschool.com, realagriculture.com, or as a podcast on your favorite streaming service. Download the latest episode today.
I'm Lindsay Smith from RealAgriculture.com. Join me Monday nights for The Agronomists, a 1-hour live and interactive show broadcast across YouTube, Facebook, and X. Monday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, I host expert agronomists from all over the country to give you answers to some of the toughest agronomic questions. Join us live or catch the replay Tuesday morning. That's The Agronomist with me, Lindsay Smith, Monday nights live at 8 p.m. Eastern.
We are not too far away in Saskatchewan from the Saskatchewan Stock Growers Annual General Meeting. It's happening June 9th through 11th in Swift Current, Saskatchewan. Registration is now open. All you got to do is visit skstockgrowers.com for more information and to register. That's going to be a great meeting, and I think there'll be lots of discussion about the high quality, the grass coming. And lots of optimism right now in the beef sector. Indeed. Shaun Haney, Peter Pete Johnson with you here on this Monday edition of the show. Hey, Pete, we were talking about disease earlier, and one of the I forgot about it, but I wanted to talk about fusarium because the window on the winter wheat crop for fusarium is a little bit earlier than normal here right now.
Oh, a little bit early, Shaun. It's crazy early.
Okay, fine. Correct me.
So, they sprayed. So we applied the T3 fungicide, the fusarium fungicide, to Pete's wheat on Sunday. Mm-hmm. So we were hoping to do it on Saturday. It rained Saturday. We couldn't do it. We got it done Sunday. That's May 26th. I looked through my records. The earliest I've ever done it before, ever, is June the 6th. So that's a full 10 days earlier, right? At least maybe 11 than I've ever done it before. And that's because the crop is just that far advanced. And it's really interesting, Shaun. February was like spring. We almost moved from spring to summer in early May. The wheat crop has just been going gangbusters. And there's so much growth. I mean, gosh, all the yen stuff talks about biomass. Big biomass is big yields. The biomass that we have in this wheat crop is unbelievable. The hay growers are all saying, the people that got the hay cut is like, wow, yields are like record yields in the hay crop. Growers cutting winter triticale for forage, and the biggest complaint was there is so much stinking crop here, it takes me forever to get across a 100-acre farm. I can't get enough wagons here. And I'm going like, well, that's kind of a nice
boo-hoo.
Exactly, right? Like if you got to have a problem, that is the problem.
Goodness.
We look at this fusarium window. It's really early, and it's, again, you talked about spraying and jamming up sprayers. Sprayers are jammed up. And with the wet weather, it jams them up again. But the window is 10 days to 2 weeks ahead of normal. And that window is like, we have high fusarium risk because we've had excellent temperatures for fusarium. In most areas, we've had lots of rainfall. In fact, in some areas, so much rainfall that growers have zero crop in the ground. Some growers have yet to plant a seed, and it's the 26th, 27th of May today. My gosh. But we need to get the T3 fungicide on both from the stripe rust and also the fusarium standpoint. And so lots of discussion about that. Lots of growers, we always talk about this timing issue, and it's important. But lots of growers, as soon as they see that first little bit of pollen on the first wheat head, it's time to go. Man, if you have uneven wheat, and wheat in Ontario and Western Canada as well is often uneven, those tiller heads are behind. If you go the first sign of pollen on the main stem, the tiller heads aren't even emerged. If they're not emerged above the flag leaf, you can't get control. So the window is bigger than we think. It's sort of, we really like to see 50% flower or day two days after it fully heads out. When the 75% of the heads are fully cleared, the flag leaf is day 0. So from 2 days after that, even as late as 6 days after that is kind of the window. So there's a 4 or a 5 day window. Gives you a nice window to get the job done. But yeah, we're in that window, and with the fusarium risk, man, I just think growers need to spray to protect both from fusarium and from the stripe rust issue.
We talked about this early in the prior segment, but again, like, do some thinking. Like, as the sprayer is backed up, and if you're dealing with that on the farm, like, okay, where am I going next, and what am I doing? And of course, there's a logistics of, sometimes switching fields means you're doing you're cleaning out tanks. Like, there's that kind of slowdown too. So there's a lot of factors that go into this. But this is a year where you get to challenge yourself and do some logistical planning, along with Mother Nature cooperates with lack of wind. But prioritizing, where am I going next? What is critical for me to do, especially if you mix in winter crops. If you got spring crops and winter crops, then you're dealing with a whole bunch of stuff in your head. But don't underestimate that decision-making process of what are the priorities, not just what's maybe convenient. There's some considerations there anyway.
Oh yeah, 100%. And good you mentioned clean out, man. You're gonna switch from a glyphosate or I don't know, some herbicide on corn and soybeans. You're going to go spray the T3 on your winter wheat crop. You better do an excellent job of clean out. And here's one thing we learned this spring that we haven't run into before, but Triactor, which is a soybean herbicide, excellent soybean herbicide for IP soybeans. Like, it's got 3 different modes of action, but it has Valterra in it.
Right.
And that Valterra has been acting really sticky in the tank. And so you do your normal triple rinse, you think you've got it, and you haven't. You've gotten the other 2 actives, they're out of the tank. We're not worried about the Imzethapyr, the Pursuit, if you will, or the Metribuzin. It comes out easy. If you're tank mixing with glyphosate, the glyphosate's gone. But the Valterra sticks to the walls. And then you put in your fusarium fungicide or a fungicide and go spray the wheat crop, and you can burn the daylights out of that wheat crop. So read the label. The label says ammonia. Add some ammonia if you are using Valterra, or particularly it seems like the formulation in Triactor is really sticky. So great herbicide. I'm not knocking the herbicide, but make sure you, as a sprayer operator, do an excellent job of clean out. Otherwise, you might be surprised how much leaf damage you can do. And you don't want to damage the wheat crop at heading time, man. That is all bad. That is lowering the yield.
Yeah. Hey, well, tonight on The Agronomist, hosted by Lindsay Smith herself, 8 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock Mountain. Tonight it's RealAg in prime time for The Agronomist, and very important episode. We're talking about plant growth regulators tonight. An important tool, Pete.
Oh, 100%. And Shaun, this year we should have used them more than we did in the
why didn't
crops.
You? That was a crazy, dumb decision. What are you doing?
Wait a minute now. I didn't say we didn't use them at all. We have so much growth in the cereal crops. And so even with wheat just starting to head out in the nitrogen overlaps, we have lodging. And to get lodging in wheat before the head comes out,
not a good sign.
Man, that's not a good sign. I have winter barley where we applied growth regulators twice, and in the low spots, it's lodging. So they are an incredibly important tool. When you get the right year, man, you got to use them. And it all comes down to knowing when to use them and when not to use them. Yeah. And don't use them too late. If you use them too late, you can actually damage the crops. So really great session tonight. I will be there in the chat, Shaun. I will be asking lots of questions and beating up on Lindsay as I normally do.
Well, she deserves it. One of the things I've been paying attention to this year, and Manipulator is one of the options for plant growth regulators that is out there. They've been, one of the things I've learned through Belchim, the company that does Manipulator, is the option. This is for, at this point for Western Canadian growers, is to use that product during the herbicide pass.
Yeah.
Right. And you were talking about going too late, but Manipulator was talking lots about going earlier.
Early. Yeah. And so the real challenge about going earlier is you're not as clear whether you need it or not, because you don't know what the weather's been.
Indications are there, though.
Yeah, so if you have good moisture, right? Like you said earlier in the first segment, you said, gosh, we've got lots of moisture in Western Canada, most of Western Canada. Yeah. So absolutely. So, but remember, also genetics matter. Is it a lodging-prone variety? What's your nitrogen rate? Are you really pushing that for, 80, 90, 100 bushel spring wheat, as opposed to just saying, oh, well, we always only get 50, so we're only going to put on enough nitrogen for 50? Are you split applying your nitrogen? There's a whole bunch of things. And then as much as you can put it on with your weed control pass, and it saves a pass over the field, you'll get better efficacy out of the manipulator if you apply it right at growth stage 30, 31. So right when that stem elongation starts, it's switched to reproductive over vegetative, and the head is starting to move, you get the most efficacy or best lodging reduction when you can apply it at that stage. So you're right, the window is wide, but there's also an efficacy part to that window.
Yeah, but okay, yes. So, but there's also, as my spray, like how much, am I going to be backed up? There's a bunch of stuff.
Logistical stuff. Yeah, logistics can often trump agronomy in these situations, as much as I hate that as an agronomist.
Right. What do you mean hate that? Would agronomists hate that?
No, I hate that logistics can trump agronomy. That's what I'm saying, Shaun. Yeah, you missed that. I love being an agronomist. I love agronomy, but when logistics trumps agronomy, you kind of go,
I'm thinking efficiency. You got to think about the opportunity cost. Yeah. On a lot of decisions. Okay, if I'm going to do this, what's the opportunity cost? That's what you got to keep in your head all the time, and that's another part of the decision-making process on any agronomic decision. And the other side of it too, you brought it up, is, well, we don't know what the rest of the growing season looks like, and we're making estimated guesses on what kind of year it looks to be in any of the geographies based on the fact we're not even into a month with a J in front of it yet.
Yep.
Right? It's early. We, as of last Tuesday, we're only 60% seeded in Alberta. Right?
Yep.
So this isn't an easy game.
No, 100%. Yet, and you play probabilities. That's what you do. Yeah.
Based on past experiences too. Not although,
Yeah. Moisture, past experience, nitrogen rate, genetics, look at it all, put the package together, make the decision, do it when it works.
Test strips.
Yes, exactly. I love it. There are no mistakes in agriculture, only test plots.
That is correct. Hey, what's on for the rest of the week, Pete?
So we are going to be scouting hard. The corn is emerging. It's been really quick to come out of the ground here. We also, of course, have our normal agribusiness breakfast meeting in Ridgetown tomorrow morning. I'll be there. Yeah. Wheat Pete's Word on Wednesday. Never forget Wheat Pete's Word. It's just been so much fun doing the Word this last little bit. Lots of feedback, lots of great questions, lots of people saying they appreciate it being done, which is kudos to you, Shaun, for hosting it and getting it up there. It's all lots of stuff.
That's good stuff. Pete, it's always great to chat with you. Thanks so much, buddy. Have a great week.
You as well, Shaun. Have a good one.
If you have any feedback on today's show, you can send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. Of course, you can find Real Agriculture across all the different social media platforms. You're also more than welcome to call the Real Ag feedback line. The number is 855-776-6147. Everybody, thanks so much for making Real Ag Radio and Rural Radio 147 a big part of your workday and getting real and getting connected. Check you out tomorrow. Cheers, everybody.